If you were to visit Japan, you would find that only about 1% of the population there call themselves Christian. The vast majority practice Buddhism and Shintoism. They do not worship the God of the Bible and don't look to Jesus as their Lord and Savior. But if you visit Japan this month, you will find them celebrating Christmas. If you go window shopping downtown, you'll see store windows decorated for Christmas and brightly lit Christmas trees in public places. You'll see the Buddhist and Shinto Japanese people out shopping for Christmas presents. The Shinto and Buddhist Japanese greet each other with Merry Kurisumasu, meaning Merry Christmas. And you will find that they're sending each other Christmas cards. Young couples can be seen strolling through city streets to look at the Christmas lights together. And a romantic meal on Christmas Eve is so popular that you might find it difficult to reserve a table at a restaurant in Tokyo. These Japanese don't believe in Jesus, but they have a tradition of celebrating by eating fried chicken on Christmas Day. And they also enjoy what they call Christmas cake, which is a sponge cake decorated with strawberries and whipped cream and a figure of Santa Claus. Christmas parties are often held for children. They play games and dance and eat Christmas cake decorated with Santa Claus. In 2020, Nippon Airways delivered more than 80,000 letters to Santa from Japanese children. They look to Santa-san, as they call him, as a gift bringer with a sack full of toys. Why have I described in such detail how the non-Christian Japanese celebrate the holiday? Because it proves the point that there are really two very different Christmas holidays. The biblical celebration of the miraculous virgin birth of Christ, and the secular celebration centered around Santa Claus, gifts, festive lights, decorated evergreen trees, and people getting together to have a good time. Christians in America usually blend the two, sharing in festive gatherings, sharing holiday meals, giving gifts, sending cards, maybe even featuring a jolly St. Nicholas, all the while honoring Jesus as the reason for the season. But much of that Christmas celebrating can also take place without honoring Jesus, as we can see from the way it's done in Buddhist and Shinto Japan. The birth of Christ doesn't figure anywhere in their thoughts or expressions. It's just an occasion to have a good time. And that's what Christmas is becoming here in America. Let's look more closely at what's happening. Christians keep in mind that Jesus is the reason for the season, but America is becoming increasingly secular and multicultural. So the American Christmas is becoming almost indistinguishable from the Japanese Christmas, a have a good time holiday without mention of the birth of Christ. This is noticeable in the malls and stores and over the airwaves, where the holiday music played includes fewer and fewer old-time Christmas carols, the ones with lyrics about Jesus' birth and how it brings blessings for us today. The secularization of America can also be seen in the way people decorate their homes or abstain from doing so. My own observation is that decorations for Halloween now outnumber those for Christmas. I see far fewer homes decorated for Christmas than in the past. Hardly anyone decorated for Halloween years ago, but illuminated ghosts, skeletons, and spiders show up everywhere now. And homes that do decorate for Christmas now tend to display Santa and reindeers rather than a creche or nativity scene. So we occasionally see highway billboards or Facebook posts that say, "Keep Christ in Christmas." And some people do literally take Christ out of Christmas by using Xmas as a shortened name for the holiday. Now, that might seem at first glance to be part of the secular war against Christmas carried on by atheists and the ACLU. They go to court to have creches and manger scenes removed from public places. But actually, the use of Xmas wasn't always as sinister as it seems now. It goes back centuries. Some trace it back to the Greek letter chi, pronounced chi or chi, which looks like our letter X and is the first letter of the Greek word Christos, meaning Christ. So the letter X could be used as an abbreviation to represent Christ, and Xmas could legitimately be used to stand for Christmas, without any attempt to remove Christ, according to that view. However, the vast majority of Americans don't speak Greek and don't know the Greek alphabet. So the use of the term Xmas today often does amount to Xing out Christ. And the substitution of X for Christ can become part of that same war against Christmas waged by atheists and the ACLU. So the term Xmas is now one of the controversies surrounding the Christmas holiday. How odd it is that shopkeepers in Shinto Buddhist Japan freely greet customers with Merry Christmas, while store employees in once Christian America are told to say Happy Holidays instead. Those who push for a multicultural society argue that saying Merry Christmas is offensive to non-Christians. But is it really? In a survey of American Buddhists, Pew Research Center concluded that 76% of Buddhists living in this country actually celebrate Christmas themselves. So they certainly wouldn't be offended if someone offered them Christmas greetings. And it doesn't seem to bother the non-Christian Japanese, who smile and enthusiastically greet each other with Merry Kurusumasu. Meanwhile, here in the USA, some now see saying Merry Christmas as a political statement, a way to show that we're not bowing to pressure to be politically correct by saying Happy Holidays. In the long view of history, today's atheists and the ACLU are relatively new kids on the block, but controversy over Christmas goes back a long way. In 1647, a revolution in England led by Puritans overthrew the British monarchy, and they executed King Charles I. One of the first acts of the new government was to outlaw Christmas in England. The Puritans were offended by the rowdy behavior of revelers. They pointed to the drinking, gambling, and sexual immorality that often accompanied Christmas feasts. Here in Massachusetts, the kinder, gentler Pilgrims first settled in Plymouth, but the Puritans soon controlled the government of Boston and the Massachusetts Bay Colony. In 1659, the Massachusetts legislature made celebrating Christmas a criminal offense. Their law imposed a fine on, quote, whoever shall be found observing any such day as Christmas or the like, either by forbearing of labor, feasting, or any other way, end of quote. Happily, they repealed that law around 25 years later. Massachusetts residents no longer had to fear being fined if they took the day off work on December 25th to celebrate Christmas. Actually, controversy over religious holidays goes way back. well before the time of the Pilgrims and Puritans. In the very early Christian churches, established back in the first century in Jerusalem and throughout the Roman Empire, there were holiday controversies that threatened to split some of those early churches. At that time, it was the Jewish holidays that gave rise to disputes among Christians. Holidays like Passover, Yom Kippur, and Hanukkah, as well as the Saturday Sabbath. The first Christians in Jerusalem were all Jews, just like Jesus and the 12 apostles. And as the Apostle Paul and other missionaries traveled abroad to spread the gospel, their first stop was usually the Jewish synagogue in each city. They would tell their fellow Jews that the Messiah promised in the Old Testament had finally come, and they would show them how Jesus fulfilled the prophecies in the Hebrew Scriptures, proving him to be the long-awaited Christ. After converting as many local Jews as possible, the apostles would then turn to the Gentiles in each city and share the gospel with them too. The result was that the early churches had both Jews and non-Jews among their members. The Jewish Christians had all grown up celebrating the Jewish holidays, and many of them continued doing so. Some of them thought that non-Jewish Christians should also start celebrating the Jewish holidays, even telling them it would be a sin not to do so. To make matters worse, some of the Gentile Christians told the Jewish believers to quit celebrating them and give up their traditions. You can imagine the controversy this generated in the churches, with hard feelings and hostility. Just picture how it would be if half of a church insisted that the church should hold special Yom Kippur observances, and the other half of the church felt very strongly that no such thing ought to happen. Suppose, too, that those on each side denounced those on the other side as sinners. Well, that's the type of situation the Apostle Paul had to deal with, trying to promote peace and unity in the early churches. We have an example in the 14th chapter of Paul's letter to the Roman church. This is how the Lord inspired Paul to write about that holiday controversy. Who are you to judge someone else's servant? To his own master he stands or falls, and he will stand, for the Lord is able to make him stand. One man considers one day more sacred than another. Another man considers every day alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. So Paul is talking about holidays here. He had in mind the Jewish holidays that were the center of so much controversy in the first century churches. But the same principles applied to Christmas. The Puritans here in Massachusetts must not have been reading this passage when they passed their laws outlawing the holiday. In the next verse, Paul continues, "He who regards one day as special does so to the Lord." Of course, there are things we might need to avoid at Christmas. If our place of secular employment is known to hold office parties where people get drunk or flirt with married co-workers, Paul's counsel in Romans chapter 13 may be helpful. He wrote, "Let us behave decently as in the daytime, not in orgies and drunkenness, not in sexual immorality and debauchery, not in dissension and jealousy. Rather, clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the sinful nature." That advice is sufficient to curb rowdy behavior. There's no need to ban the holiday as the Puritans did. By making Christmas illegal, they threw the baby out with the bathwater. So, yes, there really are two Christmases. Satan the devil may have planned to distract people from Christ, and some people may be distracted by the attention given to Santa Claus and snowmen. But I think that Satan's trick backfired on him. If everything about Christmas were purely religious, focused on Jesus, non-believers would have abandoned the holiday entirely. But in our increasingly secular society, the secular Christmas ensures that the holiday continues. And mixed in with the jingle bells, there are still Christian hymns, sermons set to music that fill the air even in public places. I remember back years ago when I was a young atheist, I remember being moved emotionally by Christmas lights and music in public places. And shortly after that, I began to believe in God again. I think the Christmas music helped soften my heart and prepare me to become a believer. More recently, I was sitting in a doctor's waiting room and noticed that the speaker system was playing secular Christmas tunes about Santa Claus, jingle bells, and snowmen. But then the next song that came on was a hymn straight out of our church hymn book. It was a Christmas carol that contained the gospel message, as many Christmas carols do. Many of them are like gospel sermons set to music. Then it occurred to me that if there wasn't all that secular holiday music, the radio wouldn't play the Christian ones. Our secular society wouldn't want to hear them. But they do go along with a mix of secular and religious Christmas carols. However, it seems that as each year goes by, the mix is becoming more secular and less Christian. Still, the secular celebration is actually keeping the biblical message in the public eye. It makes me think of what the Apostle Paul wrote at Philippians 1:18, where he said about certain phony preachers, "The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached, and because of this, I rejoice." So I rejoice that there is this secular Christmas alongside the real biblical Christmas, because the secular celebrations keep the public listening, even if just occasionally, to the Christmas carols that carry a biblical message. And who knows who may hear and be moved to look more closely at the real story of Christmas and their own personal need for Christ. We believers can take advantage of the festive mood by using the occasion to preach the gospel. During the holidays, local authorities suspend their ordinances that normally would limit signs so that people can adorn their front yards with Merry Christmas displays. So we can take advantage of this by displaying a creche, a nativity scene, or even a "Wise Men Still Seek Him" sign, like this one in my own front yard. And we can look for opportunities to expand on our "Have a Blessed Christmas" greeting by talking about the holiday's true meaning with those who will listen. The baby in the manger is now our living Lord, and he will answer your prayer to help you to use the two Christmases as an opportunity to share his gospel.